To my fellow classmates, to our Professor Dr. Enya Marie Apostol, I am Alan Ragan sending a greetings of a beautiful Sunday to each one of us. This is my report in our subject, Management of Information System. And my assigned topic came from the last part of Chapter 3, which is about the role and importance of management. Today, I'm going to discuss more on the Management Information System as a tool for management process. Under this, it has 6 subtopics, namely management effectiveness, planning, organizing, staffing, coordinating and directing, and last but certainly not the least, all about controlling. I know that each one of us is really aware that in managing a certain organization, for you to be able to succeed, one must have management skills. These management skills are really prerequisite in performing all of the duties and responsibilities. As taking into account the present nature of management, well, it is really not an easy task at all. Inevitably, it involves managerial issues and concerns that the manager will have to go through, and he or she must end up being victorious. Yes, acquisitions of skills doesn't happen overnight or as fast as we snap our fingers. But the manager must not take it for granted, as success lies with the foundation of effective management. Before I officially start with my discussion, I want all of us to ponder first with this wisdom that says, if you do not know where you're heading, you're likely to end up somewhere else. This is pertaining to the importance of management, that without considering well the aspects of management, you'll probably lose your way to success. That is why management, or I should say effective management, really matters. Now I'm going to discuss with my topic about management of information system as a tool for management process. So we are briefed already about what management is all about. Basically, it deals about planning, organizing, leading, and controlling of human and other available resources within the organization to achieve organizational targets efficiently and effectively. So the process of management requires a lot of data and information for execution of the plan. The reason for this is because in every step of the management, decisions or variety of decisions rather are taken to correct the course of development. The decisions or actions are prompted due to the feedback given by the control system. These feedbacks throw light on the direction organization is moving to or is heading to. So these feedbacks, whether it's constructive or the other way around, are really critical in the decision-making process of the managers. So these feedbacks will be telling whether to stop, to continue a certain project, or simply do some changes or do some alterations within the project for the purpose of achieving the organizational goals, targets, and objectives. So a good management of information system must furnish information to the managers to expand their knowledge base. He must know the adverse trends in business, the shortfalls, and failures in the management process. So if effective management system is to be assured, or you really wanted to achieve effective management, it has to rest on business information. So the management performance improves if the business risk and uncertainties will be handled effectively. But the question is how? How are we going to address or to handle the complexities, the uncertainties within the organization? So this is to be handled if the information provided will be adequate. So if it is adequate, one or the manager can deal with all of those problems effectively. The management of information system should provide the support to act and decisively, the complexity of business operations with skill in foresight to avert the crisis. So it should highlight on the critical success factors and support key areas of management. Management of information system should have, wherever possible, support systems to help the managers, of course, in decision-making process, which is really important within the organization. Modern business has become more technology-oriented, wherein the manager is required to be up to date on technological advancement, not only in his field of operations, but also in other fields as well, and also in other technologies which are available. The emerging new technologies are posing threats to current business and are opening new opportunities to new business ventures. The manager has to keep himself updated and keep himself abreast on the informations of how these technologies affect his business prospects. These technologies could be a boon or bane. So it depends on the manager on how he or she is going to incorporate the technologies available in favor of his business or of the organization as a whole. The management process is executed through a variety of decisions taken at each step of planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, and also controlling. These decisions relate to the choice in the allocations of resources, the methods of using the resources, the applications of the tools and the techniques, the use of manpower by way of staffing, and the manner in which the efforts are coordinated within the organization. And now let's proceed with the components of process of management. The first one is management effectiveness. Negandi Staffing provides a good model for the analysis of management effectiveness. His model puts a lot of emphasis on the two factors. The first one is management philosophy, and the second one is environmental factors. So the management practices therefore emerge out of the management philosophy and environmental factors. And the management effectiveness would largely depend on these two factors. Now let's start with the management philosophy. It sets guidelines for deciding the management practices to run the enterprise. On the other hand, environmental factors provide opportunities to survive and grow with certain constraints. Among the two factors, management of philosophy and environmental factors, it is the environment which is difficult to control. So it is left for the management to change its philosophy towards the various players in the business, the employees, the customers, the suppliers, the government, and the community and the shareholders. So if the attitude towards the consumer is changed to fulfill the expectations, giving rise to a higher satisfaction, then the management practices in the product design, manufacturing, and marketing will also undergo some changes. Now let's have the goals, objectives, and targets. The process of management usually begins with setting of goals, objectives, and targets. But what are the differences between these three terms? Let's start discussing one by one. When we speak of goals, these are long-term aims to be achieved by the organization. On the other hand, objectives are relatively short-term milestones to be accomplished, and targets generally refer to the physical achievements of organization's business. These three are to be achieved within a stipulated time, and failure to do so means loss of business profits and of the image of your business. The setting of goals, objectives, and targets help to pool the resources of the organization in one direction, and that is the path to success. More than just managing employees, qualified managers have specific skills in common that put them ahead of the pack. These skills are related to planning, organizing, staffing, coordinating and directing, and controlling. Let's start discussing all of these skills one by one, and let's start with planning. Why there is a need to plan? Why plan on the first place? Is planning important? According to Alan Lakin, he said planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. This is the essence of why planning ahead matters. Many argue that plans do not normally work, especially in this fast-paced world where everything is changing so constantly. Proper plans, however, when they are formulated ahead of time, help the leaders and organizations to execute their projects, reach their goals, and fulfill their visions. Chinese philosopher Confucius said, "A man who does not plan long ahead will find trouble at his door." Successful people and organizations are aware of this concept. Those who are successful have planned ahead and finding many benefits. Planning is a process of identifying and selecting appropriate organizational goals and courses of action. Planning is basic to all managerial functions. It is a process of selecting one course of action from different alternatives for achieving the stated goals, objectives, and targets. It is a decision-making process determining in advance of what to do, when to do, how to do, what is to do. Planning creates a frame of activity and events which are to happen or a runway for achieving corporate goals, objectives, and targets. Planning process demands resource allocation through decision making. The organization may have a plan, but the question is how effective the plan is. An efficient plan enables the management to handle uncertainty and risk in the business. And now let's move to the steps in planning. Actually, I'm going to share with you 3 steps. The first step in planning is forecasting the environment in which the plans is to be made and operated. Forecasting provides information about your business, about population, price trends, market changes, new opportunities, so that plans will be developed and implemented. The second step is all about determining alternative courses of action. The management ability lies in creating number of alternatives. The effective way of creating a number of alternatives is to build models of the situation and use it as a tool for the generation of the alternatives. The third step in planning process is to evaluate the best among all the feasible alternatives. The analysis and evaluation is done with reference to the objectives, such as how to minimize the cost, how to maximize the profit, the yield, and the productivity. The right choice of an objective is crucial factor in the selection process. The planning begins with setting up of goals, objectives, and targets, and ends up in selecting the most rational course of action. Here are the things to ponder in the planning process. Here are the questions that you're going to ask yourself when you are making a plan. First question, what goals does the organization want to accomplish? This is to ask yourself because your plan must be congruent with the goals, objectives, and targets of the organizations that they want to achieve years from now. Second question is what action to take to achieve these goals. Any goals, objectives, and targets wouldn't be realized without any actions to take. So it must be cleared what are the series of actions or what are the effective ways that you're going to do for you to be able to succeed and really realize the goals. Third question is who will be used to achieve these goals. Of course, there will be people who are going to work hand in hand to achieve all of these goals, and it must be cleared and stated in your plan. A rational plan or a decision can be rejected on the premise of a policy. But what is policy? The policy is a statement of a management in which stands on the top of all the plans and courses of action. The policies are evolved in a wider frame of strategies and are generally not questionable. But these policies can be changed. For example, the organization can have a policy of recruiting personnel with a qualification of MBA, or policy of changing the price of a certain product once a year. The policy, therefore, is a general guideline which is to be followed by all. A strict adherence to the rules and procedures build discipline within the organization. A smooth implementation of the plan calls for the rules, procedures, and programmers to be observed properly. The effectiveness of the plan depends on how it is implemented. A successful implementation requires appropriate timing of launching the basic plan and its derivatives. Lack of knowledge creates the problems of going away in a totally different direction. The plan must be evolved by people who are going to implement it. Their participation brings their involvement and commitment to the plan. For effective planning, participation should be encouraged. Of course, one cannot achieve it alone. There must be collaboration and participation from all of the members involved. Remember that the ideas coming from different people may have a big difference and big impact in the organization. An effective planning should begin at the top and flow down the line. So the effectiveness is through series of decisions, committing resources, giving direction, and executing controls. So this is to develop the alternatives based on some choice about goals. There are fundamental questions to ask in the planning stage. Number one, where are we now? This question is pertaining to a sort of assessment for you to really know the current status of your business, whether it's good, better, or best. Knowing the status is really critical for you to create a plan that would address that status and make it better. Second question is, where do we need to be? This is a future end state. There must be an end within the organization to where it is heading to, or to where exactly the organization wants to be in the near future. The third question is how we will close the gap. Of course, in achieving the goals, there will be hindrances, there will be obstacles, and it must be cleared in the planning stage on how you're going to close those gaps. How are you going to combat all of those obstacles and hindrances along the way in achieving the goals? And fourth, how will we monitor our progress? Of course, in the implementation process, there must be a monitoring so that you would know whether your project is really working well or the plan is really going well, and for you to also to have a best response to it, whether you're going to continue or whether you're going to stop or you're going to do some alterations to the project to achieve the goals that you want. In terms of organizing, this is an important step in the managerial process and relates to people within the enterprise. Organizing deals with a quantitative and a qualitative aspect of manpower in terms of placement, the roles that they're going to play, the relationship amongst them, with the aim that the people are going to work together effectively towards achieving the goals, objectives, and targets. In essence, it deals with organizing the manpower resources for a given plan of execution. Under organizing, there are 5 factors that you have to consider. The first factor is organization levels and the span of control. This factor deals with grouping the people in the hierarchical form, determining the levels in the organization. The levels get determined by the span of control. That is, in the organization, how many subordinates a superior can manage. This number can vary from 4 to 8 in the higher levels of management, and 8 to 15 in the lower levels of management. There are other considerations that you're going to take: the strengths and weaknesses of the people, and also the degree of delegation of the responsibilities that your manager or your superior is willing to attain. The second factor under organizing is departmentations. So departmentation is a process of breaking an enterprise into smaller groups and levels. So there are a number of ways to break the enterprise, but I'm going to focus more on the 3 methods of breaking the enterprise. The first method, which is widely accepted, is by functions of the enterprise. So you will be grouped by your function, whether it's for marketing, by production, by finance, by personnel, by materials, and other functions of your business or of your organization. The second method is based on geographic area distribution. This method is resorted to when the distances are long, the activities are many, and the decision making is decentralized. So here, the organizations have divisions, branches, and territories. The third method of breaking the enterprise or by departmentation is by way of the product or the services the organization is providing. So each method of the departmentalizing has advantages and disadvantages. So therefore, it is up to the manager to choose based on the needs of the management or which among the methods is really suited to the needs of the management depending on the project that the manager is handling at that time. The third factor is relations of line and staff functions. The functions of a department can either be as a line or as a staff. But what is the difference between the two? Let's learn it now. So the functions which have a direct responsibility of achieving the targets for production or sales are line functions. The sub-functions, on the other hand, are those which do not participate directly in the activity but aid line functions to achieve the targets. Production, planning, marketing, purchasing, and other related works are staff functions. The distinction is more clear and precise at a higher level. The staff function is advisory but owns also the responsibility for the result and is also accountable for non-performance. And now let's have the fourth factor under organizing, and it is about delegation of authority. What is delegation? Handing over a limited authority of decision-making to the subordinates is what we call delegation. The concept of delegation is based on the premise that an individual can take decisions or can take part in the decision-making process if he or she just provided by the information, knowledge, and guidance coming from the manager or coming from the superior, or is motivated to perform. But there are reasons for a manager not to delegate. What are those reasons? First, the manager doesn't have a positive attitude towards delegation. He doesn't want a delegation to happen within the organization. The second one is he is not receptive to the subordinates' ideas. He thinks he is superior enough to come up with great ideas that he no longer needs ideas coming from other people, especially ideas from his subordinates. The third one is that he is not willing to accept the risk of failure or mistakes done by the subordinates. A failure to use the delegated authority emanates from a lack of communication, guidance, training, and motivation. And now we are down to the fifth and the last factor under organizing, which is towards effective organization. So organization becomes effective if it is designed for the unity of goals and objectives with precise planning and optimum span of control. It works on the principle of command, delegation, and parity of authority and responsibility. It becomes productive if it's flexible enough to change and is headed by a manager with leadership qualities. And now let's have the next skill, which is about staffing. The function of staffing deals with manning the enterprise as per the organization structure so that they together implement the process of management. Staffing involves not only selection of a person, but also appraisal and development so that they can perform their designated roles. The selection of a person is really a difficult task. However, the chances of selecting a wrong person for a certain job are very less if proper method is used. Hence, the selection of a person in terms of the different factors like age, qualification, and potential becomes an important task in human resource development. Staffing is really critical, or letting people enter your organization is something really important. Why? Because the people are going to work to reach the organizational targets, objectives, and goals. So what if you hired the wrong person? So it means you will going to fail, and you're not going to succeed reaching all of the goals that you have for your organization. But how are we going to find out whether a certain person is suited for the job if he has the potentials necessary for the development of the organization, if he can contribute or really make a difference within the organization? So let us find out. A person is said to have a good managerial potentials or skills aside from the function knowledge if he has the desire to manage. The person has also the necessary drive and self-motivation to manage. He must be able to identify himself within the corporate goals and be committed in achieving all of those goals. The person must also have the capability of applying all of the knowledge in the right perspectives, addressing also the issues and concerns arising within the organization, and providing solutions or different courses of action just to fill the gaps in the organization. In short, the person rather should have an analytical ability. The person also must have to perform effectively. This is possible if the person can able to communicate effectively. Because if the person doesn't have the ability to communicate effectively, his ideas, no matter how great the ideas are, it will be useless if it will not be properly communicated. Another important skill that I know all of you would agree with me if I would say that the manager must be a person of integrity. He should be honest, trustworthy, and high achiever. How are we going to track whether the person is honest? Of course, we're going to track it based on the records of the person, working experience of the person, and other extracurricular activities that he is performing. For coordinating and directing, the manager's role here in this situation is to coordinate all of the plan of activities and provide leadership to the group to keep the plan moving. Well, not all of the time, the subordinates would exactly know how to perform a certain activity. He or she needs the technical assistance coming from the higher ups, coming from the superior, coming from the managers, so that he or she can able to perform what is being expected of them, or even more than that. So directing and leading are the methods wherein the subordinates are led to understand the purpose of the activity, and by the way of the guidance coming from the managers, a direction is given to the subordinates for them to march also on the same path towards the goals. And by that, the issues and concerns, the difficult and conflicts are being handled effectively and being resolved. Moreover, the task of directing and leading becomes more effective if the human side of the enterprise is taken care of by motivating the people. Therefore, the managers are being required to create a working environment that is really conducive for the subordinates to perform their best. Because, personally speaking, I am more productive if I'm intrinsically motivated. So in the same note, subordinate would also perform and have the best version of themselves in terms of performing the task that they are going to perform if they are really motivated, if they are being recognized, if they are given the merits, the rewards out of the efforts that they have exerted for the organization. So in this stage of controlling, a lot of changes may happen within the organization. May have the change in the plan itself, reallocation of the resources, application of new systems, procedures, and rules. A lot of changes may happen, or changes are prompted because of the assessment that you've conducted. Maybe based on the result of the assessment, or based on the result of your balance score sheet, there is something wrong with the project, or there is something wrong with the plan, that it's not working well with the way you want it to work. So that's why changes are really important and it should be implemented for the betterment, of course, of the plan and of the organization as a whole. The only thing that you have to remind yourself that the best control is the one which brings back the process back into the operation on the main track without outside intervention. The outcome you want from controlling is to see performance in being able to regulate ineffectiveness when it arises. That ends my discussion out of the topics that were given to me. I hope you've learned something from the discussion, and I hope I made it clear that effective management is really important and we must take it seriously for our own welfare. Thank you very much.